the guy said, well, doctor, my friends and relatives said I should come see someone. They're very concerned. They think that I've become convinced that I am a moth. And the doctor said, well, I'm a dentist. This sounds like an issue for a psychiatrist. Why did you come to see me? And the guy said, because your light was on. Yeah. And really, I have to thank Leonard Cohen because, I mean, not only because I love Leonard Cohen, but also because when my wife was a little girl, the two guys who she thought were just the most handsome guys in the world were Leonard Cohen and Dr. Spock. And so then when I showed up and proposed, she said yes, and now she gets to watch, you know, as like every year I look a little bit more like Leonard Cohen and Dr. Spock. Yeah, guys named Leonard. That's her thing. All right, so when last we were here, we were looking at the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains, and now the people that we think of as the Sioux, and that's a French word. Again, it's a French word that means the thighs. But really the peoples of the plains were the Lakota and the Dakota and the Cheyenne and the Crow tribe. There were all of these different peoples. And today we're looking at a Lakota story in which they originally lived in the Great Lakes area. And then after the Revolutionary War, the colonies who had just won their independence not only won their independence from England, but more importantly, what they really won was they won their independence from all of England's treaties with the Native Americans. And so England had promised that the colonies would not spread more than 50 miles west of the coastline. And they had this deal. And then, and of course, that was a real problem for the colonies. And so once they got out of that in the Revolutionary War, they immediately started pushing west. And some of the tribes were wiped out, and some of them were turned against each other, and some of them were just pushed off into the plains. And so the Lakota people of the plains, who had been corn farmers in the Great Lakes area, they got pushed off into this area where their whole way of life was not going to work anymore. There was not enough wood to build their traditional houses. They didn't have the kind of land that they needed to farm in their traditional ways. And so in their story, they were starving, and I was telling the story last time, and they sent out 2 hunters on one last desperate hunt. And they see this woman walking toward them on the plains, and they bring her back to the village and recognize her as a holy person. And she sits down with this group of people, and she tells them about this whole other way of life. And essentially, she comes and negotiates a treaty between the people and the animals of the plains. It is a treaty in which the bison are still going to own the plains. They're still going to be the chief of the plains. But that there are certain things that the animals cannot do for themselves. There are certain songs they cannot sing. There are certain dances that they cannot do. And so they need the people to come. And in a way, they need the people to be the shaman of the plains. They need the people to sing the songs and do the dances, to steady the seasons and make sure that the rains will fall so that the grasses will grow, so that the bison will eat. And in exchange, the bison are willing to kind of put up with the people, these visitors. And the bison are going to offer them food in the way of bison meat. They're going to offer them clothing and shelter in the way of bison hides, and tools in the way of bison bones. And so it is this woman, who they call the buffalo calf woman, who reveals this new way of life. And they say that when she finished talking with the people, she walked off alone onto the plains, and she rolled, and she got up, and she was a bison. And that was the form in which she walked away. So at the end of that story, we find that even though she appeared in human form, that really it was a bison who had come to the people and invited them to share the religion of the animals. And this was how the people learned how to survive on the plains. So it's a really important story. And the bison calf woman has been referred to as the Messiah of the people, kind of the savior and lawgiver, which is interesting because when I think about messiahs and prophets and saviors, the ones that come to mind first are like Jesus in Christianity, and Moses in Judaism, and Muhammad in Islam, and the Buddha. You know, we can think of messiahs as an all-male club, even though in this and numerous other Native North American stories, it is generally a female character who will play that role. So when we think about a religion with a female messiah, that's very different. And we know that this is a religion in which the religious leadership is not just a male thing. It's not even primarily a male thing. It is something that men and women can both be spiritual leaders in this religion. And that's very different, a female messiah. What another difference is that she is a bison messiah, is that the religion, unlike the religions that we are most familiar with, it's not just a religion that is about and primarily concerned with people. It's a religion in which the animals are also members of it. As a matter of fact, it is the animals who reveal it, and it is the animals who are the original members of this religion. And then the people are invited to join it. As a shapeshifter, this figure, as a bison who can take on human form, I think it's interesting that she takes on a female form. I mean, if you're a shapeshifter, she could have, come as anything. But coming as this, coming as this lone woman, this I think makes a significant difference in that it's not just a man who shows up and tells everybody this is how it's going to be. It is this whole other approach of this woman as teacher who invites people into this relationship. Did this story literally happen? That I wasn't there, and I don't know. But what I do know is this. To say that the bison is the savior and teacher and lawgiver in this religion, that's true because if you are going to be a people who are going to live in relationship with the bison, and if you're going to be a people whose food and clothing and shelter are on the hoof, you do need to learn from the bison. You need to learn about the bison. You need to know not just how to figure out where they are, but you also need to learn how to figure out where they are going to be. And we know that for these people who had been chased away from their farms, the bison is a savior because that is what enables them to live after that. Here in Western New York, the sort of the equivalent figure is the corn mother, who is, in the creation story, that woman who first gives instruction about how corn is going to be planted. And like the bison woman, she negotiates and she teaches. She gives this important message. Now, if we saw a herd of bison coming, we would probably look at the big one in front and we would figure that that was the bull of the herd and that that was going to be the most dangerous one. Interestingly enough, bison are matrilineal. If you look at a little bison herd coming at you, what you're generally going to see is a grandmother bison and her adult female descendants, and then whatever calves, male and female, they have. Bison are one of those species where male bison tend to travel separately in what biologists call bachelor herds, and that's a herd of bison that you really don't want to run into and deal with because it's just a bunch of bison bulls. But they're this little group, and they're off doing their thing while the women and children take care of themselves. And then they all kind of gather up in June for bison, mating season. So similarly, if we saw one of the tribes of the Great Plains coming toward us, we might see the chief and the male advisors and the warriors riding in front, and we might think this is a patriarchal warrior culture. Actually, a Native American tribe on the plains would be a matrilineal tribe. There would be a handful of grandmothers and their female descendants, and then whatever males were sort of attached to them. And interestingly enough, in these cultures, when people of two different tribes got married, it was the male of one tribe who would move in with the tribe of his wife, and he would become a member of that. Kind of similar to the bison herds. The religious ritual that she taught, the bison woman, she taught certain dances, certain community rituals. The most important ritual that she taught, though, was a very personal ritual, the ritual of the sacred pipe. And this was one of the gifts that she brought. Not only did she give the people a sacred pipe, but also the knowledge of how to build one. The ritual of the sacred pipe actually begins with building a lodge, building this sweat lodge, which is a temporary structure. When you are a movable community, you can't have like a church that you bring with you. But the structure is made entirely out of sticks. There's no metal, there's no fasteners or metal ties. You take your sticks and you scrape off some bark from your stick, and then you use that as a string and you can tie it together. And you build this thing that looks, kind of like an igloo, but you put bison hides over it. And the way that you make this, the materials you make it from, it is made of plant and animal and earth and stone. It is made of these things that are sacred in these traditions. Going inside of it is a way of, going inside of, a bison hide, going inside of something that is all natural. That is where you search for yourself. And often there will be a bison skull by the doorway as a reminder that if you're a native of the plains, if you are alive, it is because this other creature has died to feed you and to keep you there. So it's a reminder of the importance of the relationship with this animal. You go into the darkness because, generally because the medicine person of the tribe has come up to you and told you that you have lost that essential knowledge, that you have lost sight of what is most important in life. The most important knowledge is relationship, is that, the human being is not the center, but is part of this great relationship of the plains, and that the individual is not the center, but only exists in relation to the land, the animals, the other people. So, essentially, if somebody wakes up in the morning and says, today's my big day, I'm the center of the universe, I'm going to be a celebrity, I'm going to have stuff and everybody's going to be talking about me, that would be the day that the medicine person comes up to you and says, yeah, no, this tribe is not big enough for a celebrity ego. You're going to have to, come inside and rediscover who you are. The sweat lodge has it's a womb shape. It's someplace that you go because you need to kind of gestate. It's almost like the earth needs to become pregnant with this person so that the person can go in, and that, when they come out, they will remember again that they are part of this earth. One of the things that happens in this sweat lodge is the passing of this sacred pipe. Generally, it would be, there are certain kinds of wild tobacco that grow on the plains, certain tree bark, and the ritual of smoking was a ritual of connection. So I'm not talking about smoking as something that one person does 20 times a day and another person is a non-smoker. Smoking in this culture is a religious ritual. It is a way of connecting with those other elements in nature. If we look at the sacred pipe itself, it is a combination of these elements of nature. It is wood from plants, it is stone to make the part that you actually touch the fire to. It will generally be decorated with feathers from birds. This one that we're looking at here has hair from horses, and wrapped around it are woven porcupine quills in different colors. So the pipe itself is sacred, partly because it is made out of sacred things, plant and animal and stone. It's also sacred because the making of it is a sacred activity. You are supposed to carve it and decorate it and prepare it, and while you're doing these things, you sing songs and you do chants and you say prayers, things that you believe are going to kind of summon the spirits to bring their power into this implement. The passing of the sacred pipe is, in Native American tradition, like a communion ceremony. It is there to connect you with other members of the community, past and present, the people who have used that pipe before, the people who are in the room with you when you're using it, and the people who will do this ritual in the future. It is also a way of summoning, inviting the spirits, and the spirits are attracted by scent. So when a person on the plains lights this pipe, The spirits can do all kinds of things. They cannot make fire. They cannot light this pipe. And so the people do this thing for them. It is a way of transforming matter. It's a way of transferring, taking something, plant matter from the ground, and sending it up to the sky, transforming something that is alive and green into smoke, into something that can go out to the spirits. And this is something that requires, it goes into and comes out of a human being. And this makes it a gift to the spirits. Like the Christian communion, it is a way of showing community. It's a way of bringing people together. Unlike the Christian communion, it is a community that is not only made up of human beings, but it is also made up of plants and animals and spirits and all of these other things that are part of the land. So one Native American said that these are the sacraments of our religion. For baptism, we substitute the purification by vapor. That would be sweating in a sweat lodge. And our Holy Communion is the incense of tobacco. One Native American referred to the sacred pipe as a portable church. It is something that you can carry with you, and that wherever you're using it, that becomes the sacred ground. That becomes your sanctuary. So after all of this, the refugees were oriented in this way, in this new land. They had learned a new way of getting food, a new way of making and getting shelter. The teepee, which is it's a conical tent. A teepee is bigger than you think it is. Your average teepee is made of 16 to 20 bison hides, so it's heavier than you would think it is. It's not a tent that you can put into a backpack and carry with you. This is why the natives used what they call a pony drag, which is when you cross two sticks over a horse's back and they drag behind the horse, but you can put weight on that. And so that's how you carry your teepee. Benefits of a teepee: when your food is on the hoof, you need to be able to move. A Native American, a teepee village, you could wake up in the morning, take the entire village apart in 3 hours. You could move it 10 miles in a day, and in 3 hours before bedtime, you could set the whole thing back up again. And we'll look in a future session of, more closely at how that was organized. Other benefits of a teepee: there was no basement for your kids to move into. So like once they were grown up, they were out. Although a teepee, like I said, it's bigger than you can imagine. It's bigger inside than it looks from the outside. Eight people could stay in one pretty comfortably, with a fire burning in the middle at all times. Learning the bison hunt. I was saying during my sermon about, learning how to ride a horse starting at the age of 9. Part of that is that the bison hunt always has to start with a stampede. So you find the bison, but you don't sneak up and shoot at them while they are drinking. You find them, you get ready, and then you go in and you start a bison stampede. What can you learn from a bison stampede that you cannot learn from, like, watching bison drinking from a river? The health of the animals, that when it comes time to take a bison from the herd, they're going to look for the unhealthy bison, the ones who are kind of falling behind, because the herd should be faster at the end of a bison hunt than it is beforehand. And this is one of those things that is kind of part of this balance. It's part of the deal that the people make with these animals, is that you're not going to go in and try to take out, the biggest bison in the herd, because the herd needs that one. So first of all, you start a stampede. Then you ride into it naked. You did the bison hunt in your underwear, because anything else you wore, remember, you're a person who wears all leather clothing. So anything you wear is just gonna slow you down. It's just gonna make it harder to be nimble. And if you fall off your horse in a stampede, you gotta be able to get back onto it quickly. So you ride into this, you're on a horse, you've got no saddle, you've got no stirrups. What keeps you on the horse is your leg, you're clinging to it with your leg muscles. You can steer the horse with signals from your heels, because you need one hand for a bow and one hand for an arrow. And what you're aiming for, if you can imagine this, you can shoot a bison with arrows all over, and then it'll just keep going for another 20 miles. So actually, the target in a bison hunt is that you want to take out just the shoulder of a bison, and that way it'll fall forward and it won't be able to run away. So this required precision and skill and aim. Again, your average bison hunter started with a bow, hunting birds at the age of 5, because like a bird is about the size of the target that you're looking for on a bison, and then start riding at the age of 9. So this is an incredibly dangerous way to get your food. Really, if you can imagine, getting on a unicycle, on the freeway with a bow and arrow, trying to shoot the front tire out from under a car. It was really dangerous, but it was something that people prepared for from a very early age. And if they had not, if people hadn't survived it, they would not have kept doing it that way. So you're out hunting. If you're, really fortunate, there might be 5 bison from a hunt. They weigh 1,000 pounds each on average. How do you get all of this bison home? It would probably be easier to just roll up the village and bring it to where the bison have fallen, which is another benefit of living in teepees, is that you can just go set up your village right there. And then, then the party starts. There were certain parts of the bison that would be eaten immediately. Apparently, you could eat the tongue raw right there on the spot. And then there were other parts of the bison that you would cook that night. There were other parts of bison meat that you would hang out to dry and make bison jerky. Jerky actually is a Native American word. But for the Lakota, they would take dried bison meat and they would pound berries into it and make something that they called pemmican, which was something that if you had a chunk of this bison jerky with you, you could just eat it and chew it on the road, or you could boil it and kind of reconstitute it as meat and make a bison stew. The way of boiling bison, actually, the cooking pots that these people use, because remember, in this portable culture, you didn't have any metal. You couldn't really bring any metal with you. And you know, the pots of this time were cast iron pots, so you couldn't drag one of those along. But what they would do is they would take the stomach of a bison, which would be like the size of a garbage bag, and they would kind of string the opening around this ring and have the thing hanging there. You could not burn a fire under it because it was essentially leather. But what you could do is you could fill it with water and the ingredients of your soup, and you could heat rocks, and you could drop hot rocks into this leather bag and use that to boil the water, and then use that to reconstitute the dried bison meat that you'd been carrying, and then that was how you would make your stew. So when we hear about, you know, like Native Americans using all parts of the animal, it's kind of true. It is not that they used every part of every bison, but there was a use. There was a use that was known for each part. The bison hunt, and then you would throw, you know, you'd throw this big party, you would give thanks to the bison. This dancer here is dressed like a bison, not to show, you know, kind of like, you know, victory or ownership, but really to show that that's where his biomatter has come from, that he is a bison-fed person. He was born from a bison-fed woman, and that, you know, the molecules of his body, the flesh and blood and bone of his body, have all come from this animal. And so what we're seeing here is, you know, a person who knows that he lives in this relationship with this animal, that it's not, he doesn't own the bison. There was never an attempt to like fence it in or turn it into a kind of domesticated cattle, but to, you know, respect it in a reciprocal relationship. And again, this is one of those things, you know, when we think of hunters, when we think of the relationship between the hunter and the prey, we might think of like a one-sided relationship where one side is just taking from the other side, or where, you know, the hunter feels a kind of entitlement, a kind of ownership, as if the human being is, you know, has dominion over all of the other animals, and therefore can kind of take from them as they wish. But this was seen as a reciprocal relationship, a relationship in which both sides have something to give, both sides have something to receive, and in which both are dependent on each other. Good. Well, do we have any questions about this? Yes. Good. Yeah. Well, what do the bison get out of this relationship? There were, you know, for one thing, the belief was that there were certain things, certain rituals that the people could do that the bison could not do. Rituals kind of for the good of the plains, for the good of, you know, the natural balance. And so, yeah, it was believed that people, through doing these rituals, could kind of keep the area more healthy. Mm-hmm. Yes? Uh-huh. Yes. Well, good. So, you know, as the question was, how were the bison wiped out? What happened to the bison species? And what happened was, when the veterans of the Civil War came into the plains to take over, what they found was that they couldn't beat the natives in a fight, and also that they couldn't find the villages. They couldn't attack the villages because the village could just get up and move. And so it was finally decided upon that the only way to defeat these people was to destroy their food source. And so they basically, the government put a bounty on bison. And they just said, we will pay you for bison tongues. And so bounty hunters just went out and killed bison with rifles. They collected the tongues, they turned them in for this bounty. And the species was very nearly wiped out. This was the way of getting the natives onto reservations, because these reservations, you didn't need walls and fences to keep people in reservations. All that the government needed to do was destroy the food source, destroy the bison herds, and then just put canned beef, put expired military rations, like in the middle of a place, and just tell the natives, like, if you want to eat, this is where the food is going to be. So the bison were attacked as part of this, part of this war. Mm-hmm. Yes, well, that's, yes.
And the military also was kind enough to give them blankets for warmth in the winter that they made sure had been taken from soldiers who got smallpox.
Right, yes, yeah, I know. There were, there were, yes, just really awful things that were done. And, and part of that, that horror, and the abuse and the cruelty toward the natives of the Great Plains, part of that was because they had been just so, fierce and fearsome. They were one of the most deadly enemies that the U.S. military ever encountered, and had humiliated them so badly, that then when it came to, getting the upper hand on these people, there was a great deal of cruelty. All right, well, we will continue next time. I think we're going to take a look at some more details of indigenous life on the Great Plains. So I thank you very much, and wow, when we meet again, it'll be December. So yeah, all right, well, thank you.